Hey guys, and this is kind of the coup de grace here of these problems here, where you have to take three fractions, two of which are added on the same side, and it's equal to another fraction, and you have to find what the x variable equals. Okay, that's your end job. Find what x equals. Okay. Now there might be more than one answer. There'll be two at the most. Okay, now one thing that people always fail to do, and this is something you can't mess up, is you need to parenthesize where you have plus minus. Might be a trinomial, might be a binomial. And they don't look at that and then they expect to do the problem. No, you have to factor, if possible, at the beginning of the problem. Like, I don't want to have to do an LCD where I have to use that, okay? So again, I like to extend the fraction lines because what we need to do is make them so that the bottoms all contain the same thing. That's called your lowest common denominator. But before I go to that, I need to check all my expressions and see if we can factor them. So the 5 obviously can't be factored, but I would hope that this trinomial here can be factored. So I like to do it on a piece of scratch paper so my work doesn't get all cluttered. And that's what I'm going to get an orange piece of paper for and go from there. Okay, so I've got x to the second power would be 1x to the second minus 7x plus 12. So it's a trinomial. So GCF, look at that quick, but you can see there's probably not going to be one. You don't have x on everything. 1's your smallest. No negative in front, so we're good. Okay, so I go A, B, C. So we're going to have 12 with a sum of 7. Well, I can find that easily because 12 I know is 3 times 4. And then A is equal to 1 here. So what I can do is I can make two parentheses. So x times x, because that multiplies to 1x squared every time. And then I know that 3 times 4 is 12. But the 7's minus, so we have to have minus 4, and it's a sum, so we have to have minus 3. Okay, so I'm going to want to rewrite this as x minus 3 multiplied by x minus 4. Okay, now in the second fraction, our 2 is not something we can factor, and x minus 3 is a binomial. There's two terms. There's no GCF, and it's not a difference of perfect squares, so we just leave that one alone. And then on the other fraction, the 5 can't be factored, and then x minus 4 is a binomial, but there's no GCF, and it's not a difference of perfect squares, so we will leave that one alone. Okay, so I need to come up with the lowest common denominator. So I look at my denominators. Remember, the tops don't matter, okay? So I've got a parentheses factor of x minus 3, a parentheses factor of x minus 4, then x minus 3 repeats, and then x minus 4 repeats, and I don't have any outer factors that I need to worry about on bottom, okay? So x minus 3, that has 1, that has 1, and that has 0, okay? So where there are 0, we need to make sure we adjust that so everyone has 1. Okay, x minus 4, I have 1, I have 0, and then I have 1. So I need to adjust fraction number 2 so that we have our x minus 4. Okay, now when solving for x, now that the bottoms are the same, we can forget about the bottoms and just go with the top, okay? So again, what I have here is 5 plus 2 multiplied by x minus 4. And then on this side, I've got 5 multiplied by x minus 3, okay? Now, you could punch this side, this whole thing, into your Math Papa calculator, and you have to plug the other side in, okay? My computer has run out of battery. That's nice. Okay, while it's firing up, I'll just do it on the piece of scratch paper. Okay, so right here I want to look at this. I want to look at 5 times 2 times x minus 4. So that comes from the first fraction. I just have 5, and then what I'm adding to it, 2 multiplied by x minus 4. Okay, so there's no way to simplify 5. That'll just drop down. And then I use just the distributive property, 2 times 1x 2x minus 8. Okay, so I'm going to have 2x, and then 5 and negative 8 make negative 3. So that side has 2x minus 3. Okay, and then the other side, it's pretty easy because there's just, you got to just distribute the 5. Okay, so 5 times 1x is 5x minus 15. Okay, so look at all your x's. All the x's are alike. They're like terms. They're all to the first power, so just collect them on one side and go from there. So I have negative 3x minus 3, and then negative 15. Plus 3, plus 3. So negative 3 times x equals negative 12, and then we divide by 3, negative 3, and we get our one answer of 4. Okay, so that ended up with just one answer. Okay, my next one. I'm just signing into my computer. Okay, so the same thing. I need to parenthesize my addition and subtractions. So then I can actually check if those factor. Okay, the monomials won't factor. Okay, I'm relatively sure of that. You can't factor a monomial, meaning you can't factor one term. Okay, so the monomial 10 just drops. Now, you can factor 2x plus 8. Okay, a lot of people miss that, but you can. There's a GCF of 2, so we need to factor out a 2, and that's 1x plus 4, x plus 4. Okay, you don't have a difference of perfect squares, so that's going to be at 2 times 1x plus 4. Okay, now a lot of people look on the top, they're like, well, that can't factor. Oh, but it needs to be, okay? And here's why it needs to be. You do have a GCF that you're going to need to pull out because the first term of the binomial is negative, okay? So you need to do that correctly. So GCF, you're going to have a negative, but you can't really divide by anything, so we're going to use negative 1 as the GCF. So that turns into that to positive 8 plus 7x, which is not a dot, so we don't have to go any further with that. So negative 1 times 8 plus 7x, okay? This is an obvious difference of perfect squares, okay, with no GCF, so I can go right to my plus minus. So x, x, and then 4 times 4. Okay, negative 8. Now it's a monomial, so you drop it. And then 2x minus 8 can be factored because it does have a GCF. So the GCF equals 2. So I pull a 2 out, and then I get 1x minus 4, which is not a difference of perfect squares because there's no second power. So 2 times 1x minus 4. Okay, now that everything's been factored correctly, we do our LCD. So first let's look at our parentheses. I've got 1x plus 4, which is the same as x plus 4. These are the same thing, okay? You got x minus 4, and then another x minus 4, okay? Now let's look at things out on not in parentheses. We have an outer 2, and another outer 2. So those are the three things we have to look at. So x plus 4, I've got 1, 1, and 0. So I need to bring an x plus 4 into this. Okay, then what do I need to do? I need to look at x minus 4. I've got 0, 1, and 1. Okay, so in the 0 spot, I've got x minus 4, x minus 4. Outer 2's, I've got 1, 0, and 1. So in the 0, I would strongly suggest if it's an outer, you put it in front. That is what I would suggest you do, okay? Okay, now I'm going to go to my scratch paper. On the first fraction I've got, and you can punch this all in since it's on the same side. All that can go into math pop at once, okay? How you punch in, you go 10, shift 8, and then x minus 4 plus 2 times negative 1, negative keys here, and then times shift 8, parentheses 8 plus 7x, okay? And that will calculate and collect like terms, negative 4x minus 56, okay? Now, again, if you don't have access to that, you would want to use the sheet. On the first fraction, we got 10 multiplied by x minus 4. And on the other fraction, we've got 2 multiplied by negative 1, which is multiplied by 8 plus 7x. Okay, so on the first fraction, it's just distribution, 10x minus 40. On the fraction that we're adding, I would multiply these two first, negative 2, and then I would multiply through there, and that's negative 16 plus negative 14x. Okay, now my x's are like terms. They go together, negative 4x, and then I've got these as like terms to make negative 56. Okay. So that's what happens on that side. I've got negative 4x plus negative 56. Now on the other one, you can flip this paper over and just simplify it because it's the only fraction you have, but you can just distribute right there, and that's negative 8x plus negative 32 because it's only one multiplication. It's just a distributed property. It's pretty easy to do. Okay, there's only going to be one answer because the x's, as you can see, are both to the first power, and they are also like terms. So I can add 8x. Add 8x. It gives me 4x plus negative 56 equals negative 32. And then I add my 56 to both sides. So I have 4 times x equals 24. And then I divide by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. Okay. Okay, next problem. Again, we need parentheses, parenthesize, and don't parenthesize that. There's no adding or subtracting. It's only one single term. That's 2 terms. That's 2 terms. Okay, so 7x plus 3, it's a binomial. There's no negative in front. You don't have x, and you can't divide 7 and 3 down, so we're just going to leave that. But this, I better be able to factor that. There are no problems I made where you get a trinomial at the beginning and you can't factor it, okay? That does need to be factored. GCF, T-chart, okay? So I get 15, sum of 8, and that's 3 times 5. And A equals 1 here, so it's just going to be 2 parentheses. X, 3 and 5. Got minus 8, so it's minus 5 and minus 3. X minus 3 times x minus 5. Okay, 3x just drops down. This, there's no negative in the front. There's no GCF, and there's no x on both, so that'll just stay the same. And the same thing's going to happen here. Everything stays the same. Okay, lowest common denominator. I've got x minus 3. I've got x minus 5. And that's pretty much all she wrote. X minus 3, I got 1, 0, 1. So in the 0, we've got x minus 3. X minus 5, I got 1, 1, and 0. So x minus 5 needs to be multiplied to that. Okay, now the denominators are all the same. They can be canceled in the equation. Okay, so what do I have? I have parentheses 7x plus 3 on the first, plus 3 times parentheses x minus 3 on the second. Then on the other side, I've got negative 1 times x minus 5. Okay, you can plug that in this whole side of the equation into Math Papa. Okay. Parentheses 7x plus 3, close it, plus, because you're adding that other fraction, 3x, parentheses x minus 3, hit calculate, and it's 3x squared minus 2x plus 3. You can put that on this side. Now, for those of you who'd like to see that done without the Papa calculator, I've got 7x plus 3 on the first one, and the other one I've got 3x multiplied by x minus 3. Okay, here it's just going to stay 7x plus 3 because there's no multiplying. Here I got to take 3x times 1x and 3x times negative 3. So that's going to give us 3x squared and negative 9x. Okay, so 3x squared, I take 7 plus negative 9, that's negative 2x plus 3. Okay, and that is how they derived at that conclusion, that it was equal to negative 3x minus 2x plus 3. The other side is just simple distribution. This is the only x I have, so it's negative 1x plus positive 5. Now, this time all the x's are not like terms. We got x squared and then a couple x's. So we need to move everything to one side so that we can use factoring to solve. There are going to be two answers. So I'm going to add 1x, and that would go with the negative 2x. And then I take away 5, and that would go with the positive 3. So I have 3x squared minus 1x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, now I set up my trinomial for the factoring. GCF, you don't have one. Okay, so I take a times c, and 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, looking for a difference of 1 because of that. And then 1 and 6, that's not going to work. 2 and 3, that does work. Okay, so a is equal to 3, so I need 2 sets. So 3, 3 and 3, x, 2 and 3. So we're going to have minus 1, and difference is plus 2. So 3x plus 2, and that can be divided by 3, so it's 1x minus 1. There was no GCF we have to worry about, so that's what we have. Okay, so 3x plus 2 can equal 0, or 1x minus 1 can equal 0. So I'm going to get negative 2, negative 2/3, plus 1, and that's 1. That'll be the two solutions. Okay, next one. Okay, so I got 1, x plus 1, 1, x minus 1, 2, and this is a difference of perfect squares, so plus minus x, and then 1 and 1. Okay, so when I find my lowest common denominator, I got x plus 1. I have got x minus 1. And then in the third fraction, it's just repeats. X plus 1, 1, 0, and 1. So in the 0, we x plus 1, x plus 1. X minus 1, I have 0, 1, and 1. So in the 0, we times by x minus 1, x minus 1. Okay, denominators go bye-bye. Okay, so what do I do? Well, again, you can punch 1 times x minus 1 parentheses plus 1 times x plus 1, see what that comes out to. I got 2x, okay? And of course, for those of you who want to see how that came out to 2x, on the first fraction, I've got 1 times x minus 1. And on the second one, 1 times x plus 1. So this is just going to be 1x minus 1, and the other one's 1x plus 1. So the x's add up to 2x, and then negative 1 plus 1 is 0. So that's how we just got 2x. And we just have a 2 on that side, so really I can just divide by 2. 2 times x is 2, so x equals 1. Okay, my next one. Get your parentheses down. So I've got x minus 1, can't be factored, it's a binomial. The binomials you'll know if you have to do anything kind of just by looking at it. The trinomials you need to factor, no questions asked. So there is no GCF. T-chart, sorry. Misspoke. So positive 2, sum of 3. That'd be 1 times 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. A equals 1. So I go x, 1 and 2, plus 2 plus 1. So x plus 2 times x plus 1. X plus 1 times x plus 2, sorry. 2x, that's a monomial. X plus 2 is a binomial, but there's nothing you can do to factor it. You can't factor x minus 1. You can't factor x plus 1. So on the LCDs, I have x plus 1. I've got x plus 2, and then I've just got repeats. So in the x plus 1, I got 1, 0, 1. So in the 0, we got to times x plus 1. X plus 2, I've got 1, 1, and then 0 on that one. So I've got to times that by x plus 2. Okay, cancel. And now I'm ready to set up my equation. Parentheses x minus 1 plus, you got to get that plus in there before you go to the other fraction. 2x parentheses x plus 1. Okay, and what's 2x squared plus 3x minus 1? Again, if you want to see how that's done, you got x minus 1. And on the other fraction, 2x multiplied by x plus 1. Okay. No multiplying there. It's just going to stay 1x minus 1. And that's going to be 2x times 1x. 2x times 1. So it's 2x to the second power and 2x. Okay, so put together your like terms. 2x squared has no like term. 1x plus 2x is 3x. Minus 1. So 2x squared plus 3x minus 1. And over here I'm going to flip this over, and you can punch that in because on the other side it's a little more complicated because you got x minus 1, shift 8, x plus 2. X squared plus 1x minus 2. Now, if you want to see that done, I would flip over the paper because it's only one fraction. And all I simply do is take 1x times 1x, 1x times 2, negative 1 times 1x, and negative 1 times 2. It's a FOIL problem. So 1x to the second, 2x, negative 1x, negative 2. So I got 1x squared. 2 plus negative 1 is 1x, and then minus 2. Okay, so 1x to the second plus 1x minus 2. Okay, now look at all your x's. They're to the, you got some there to the second, so there's 2 answers, and then all the x's are not like terms, so we need to collect everything on one side so I can do my factoring. So I minus 1x to the second. That can go under the 2x to the second. Minus 1x, that would go nicely with the 3x, and then plus 2 right there. So that's 1x to the second plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, GCF, don't have one. T-chart. Now, the T-chart is going to work here. 1 times 1 is positive 1. Sum of 2, well, 1 and 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, so that does work. A equals 1 here. So I get XX, 1, 1, plus and plus. Now, this one we have the same 2 factors, okay? So I only need to really, there's only going to be one answer because they're identical factors. So x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1, I get negative 1. Doesn't happen often, but it did there. Okay, next up, last one. Okay, just those two. So I've got 15 and x, both monomials. That's a binomial, but there's nothing you can do really about it. And another binomial, nothing you can do. And then 9 over 1, obviously nothing you can do about that. So LCD. For parentheses, I've just got x plus 2. That's the only parentheses, but we do have outer x now. And 1 I don't worry about, okay? 1's the one thing I don't have to worry about. So x plus 2, I have 0, 1, and 0. So the two zeros, I need to bring my own x plus 2 in the mix. Okay, outer x, I've got 1. That is not an outer x, you don't have any there. And that's not an outer x, you don't have any there. So you need to bring your own outer x in here. You can put it here or here, it doesn't really matter. Okay. Now the bottoms can be canceled because the 1 is not important. Okay, when you multiply something by 1, it just keeps it the same. Okay, so I'm going to take 15, shift 8, parentheses, x plus 2, plus shift plus, and then x, parentheses, 9x minus 7, and hit calculate. 9x squared plus 8x plus 30, okay? All right, and again, if you want to see how you get that without the calculator, first fraction I got 15 times x plus 2. The other fraction I've got x times 9x minus 7. So it's just distribution. 15 times 1x and 15 times 2. So it's going to be 15x plus 30. Okay, then on the other fraction, I've got 1x times 9x and 1x times negative 7. So it's going to be 9x to the second and negative 7x. Okay, so I've got my 9x to the second, 15 plus 8x, and then plus 30. And that's how they arrived at that. So I've got 9x squared plus 8x plus 30. Okay. Now on the other side, it's just a distribution. 9x times 1x and 9x times 2. So 9x times 1x, 9x times 2. So 9x to the second, 18x. Okay, now you got, at this point I'm like, well, there's two answers. Well, there's actually not, because if you look at your x to the seconds on each side, they're identical. So then you can cancel them out. So now you're down to just one answer. And now all the x's that remain are like terms. So to get them to one side. So I would minus 8x, so I have 30 equals 10x. I divide by 10. And x equals 3. Okay, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. Hope it's been informative and you have 2 to do.